Hi guys, Andrew here. Today with something a little special. So this video has been in the works for a while now, and we thought it would be pretty cool to turn it into a mini-series. The theme being, why are some cards that might look really cool and exciting on paper, but really fall flat or aren't being played nearly as much? And more importantly, what changes to the card could be made to make it see some play. And today I thought we would start with the Invincible cards. Now, who doesn't like game-breaking effects, right? When you read some of these effects, they sound pretty strong. Take Invincible Technology, for example. It reads, search your deck, you may take any number of cards from your deck, show those to your opponent, and put them in your hand, and then shuffle your deck. Essentially, you can draw your whole deck. Or Invincible Cataclysm, simply destroy 3 of your opponent's shields. But then you take a look at the mana cost, and suddenly a light bulb goes off in your head as to why these aren't seeing any play. So that leads to my first point. They're simply too expensive. I would say for most of these Invincible cards, a good mana cost would be, say, 10 or even 9 mana, and even then I wouldn't expect too many of them to be played. Ultimately, I think unless it's a control versus control matchup, you simply don't have enough time to get 13 mana, or even 10, before the game is decided. So unless there is a Invincible card that lets you win the game if you have 13 mana, most of the time, you're not going to win, even if you get it out. And that leads to my second point, which is even though these effects seem game-breaking, if you break it down, it's actually quite underwhelming in reality. One of those good on paper but fails in execution type of scenarios. Take Invincible Unity, for example. Each of your creatures in the battle zone gets plus 8k power and triple breaker until the end of the turn. For this to be effective, you essentially need at least 3 creatures. And then you could try at least try and win the game. And this is not even accounting for blockers or shield triggers. So more realistically, it's more like 5 or 6 creatures. And by that regard, if you have 5 or 6 creatures out, you'd probably be winning anyway. I feel like even cards like Sneak Attack, which are a lot worse on paper, but given the third of the mana cost, it actually probably is a better fit for what you're trying to accomplish, which is to swarm the board with small creatures and then finish the game on one turn. And finally, my last point on where these cards fall flat is the creativity of the cards. Apart from, say, Invincible Technology and maybe Invincible Unity, the effects of these cards aren't all that interesting. Invincible Abyss, Aura, and Cataclysm are quite simple. While they are quite powerful effects, they're not that special. There are tons of cool mechanics that each of these civilizations have. Take Darkness, for example. Darkness isn't just all about destruction. You've got this card, cool trade-off mechanics. These cards definitely deserve something a little extra. Now onto the cards themselves. First up is Invincible Cataclysm. Now the obvious change to make here would be to lower its mana cost to either 8 or 9 mana, or even have it much cheaper, but only destroy, say, 2 shields. Something like 6 mana, destroy 2 shields. Although that wouldn't really fit the theme of the card anymore, as these cards should really have extremely high mana costs, but also a significant payoff. So my change, and maybe quite a strange one, and also borrowing a page from Invincible Unity, I think it would be quite interesting to keep the mana cost at 13, but have it read each of your creatures in the battle zone gets Double Breaker, and whenever this creature breaks a shield, your opponent puts it into the graveyard instead. Essentially makes all your creatures into Bomedius. This preserves the soul of the card, which is to destroy shields, and really makes it, even having 1 or 2 creatures out, quite frightening for your opponent, which is exactly what these invincible cards should do, as you are paying quite a lot to cast them. For Invincible Abyss, again, this could be run at either 9 or 10 mana, but my proposed change would be, since I really like to keep the mana costs of these invincible cards at 13, is to just simply add on the your opponent discards his hand criteria. Now this is something that is definitely worth playing for. Essentially a big setback for your opponent, punishing him for not spending his cards. You might be thinking, this is too overpowered now. But then if you think about just how many of your games actually go to 13 mana, and plus your opponent would have to be running a dead card for the first 13 turns, and on second thought, maybe it's not too bad after all. Next we have Invincible Technology. So I actually really like the design of this card. It's actually quite unique for the Water Sieve, with the only other card that has a similar effect being Crystal Memory. So I think for this card I would actually just reduce the mana cost to say 10 mana. Next up is Invincible Aura. Now this card is really underwhelming for the effect that it has. You probably wouldn't even see any play at 8 or 9 mana. However, the change that I propose is due to the fact that Light already is quite familiar with the spell search mechanic. Instead of adding 3 random cards from the top of the deck to your shields, why not have it be search your deck for 3 spells and add them to your shields? Now that's exciting. Now those shields can really impact the game, rather than relying on RNG beforehand. You could put a Holy Ore, or even another Mana Nexus to have even more shields. The possibilities are endless. And finally, we have Invincible Unity. Again, for this card, I think the effect isn't too bad. It's quite unique. However, it doesn't really fit with the nature civilization theme. So I thought, why not let's do something crazy? What if we put the text on a 8k double breaker creature with speed attacker? That way, at least you'll be getting an extra body even if you don't get to finish the game on that turn. Also, it does give a little extra oomph for potentially finishing the game. So that wraps it up for today's DM Toolbox video. I hope that you guys like the general concept of this new video series. As I mentioned before, I really do like the idea of the invincible cards. I think the concept is great, it just falls flat on its execution. But hopefully a few of these changes that I've proposed in this video kind of give you a sneak peek as to what these cards could have been. And of course, this is all my opinion, so let me know what you guys think about these invincible cards. Do you think that they're well designed? If not, what changes would you have made? Next week we'll be back with another DM discussion video, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, this is Andrew, and you've been watching The Gauntlet.